Welcome to Count Me In. I'm your host, Adam Larson. Today, I'm excited to sit down with Kingsley Afemikhe, CFO at Shield AI, for an inspiring look at financial leadership in the world of defense tech and artificial intelligence. Kingsley brings a unique perspective, having moved from chemical engineering studies straight into financial roles at investment banks and rapidly growing startups. In our conversation, he shares how his engineering mindset helps him break down complex financial problems, drive data driven decisions, and maintain agility as Shield AI scales. We discuss the distinctive challenges of navigating government contracts, building collaborative and curious finance teams, and the role of technology plays in boosting productivity. Whether you're interested in finance tech, innovation, or organized growth, this episode offers practical insights and real world advice. Let's jump right in. Kingsley, I'm so excited to have you on the podcast today. And you have a very fascinating background with chemical engineering and then moving into finance. And I was just wondering if we could start off just a little bit by telling your story and just saying, how has that diverse experience shaped the way you kind of approach financial leadership today?
Yeah, absolutely, Adam. Thank you so much for having me on the show, and I'm really looking forward to our conversation today. So, a little bit about my background. I have a master's in chemical engineering and management, and then I never worked as an engineer. I only ever worked in finance. So, I worked in investment banking, doing fundraising, advisory, M&A, and then went off and I worked for a number of fast-growing, engineering-heavy startups, or as I like to call them, emerging growth companies, as the SEC calls it. And what's been really fantastic about that experience is being able to take what I call the engineering problem-solving framework. And what that is starting off with first principles thinking. No matter how complex the question or the challenge is, there's always a fundamental principle that you're trying to tackle. If you're willing to put the effort and time, and then B, have a very data-focused, data-driven approach, you can solve almost every problem. And so what that means, if you think about it in an engineering context, you'll start off often with a theory. Behind the theory, you want to go do a few experiments. You look at the literature to assess whether your thinking is correct, and you have the courage to step away from your original thesis if it doesn't quite pan out. And that's exactly what we do in finance all the time. And we have core principles in accounting. We have core ideas behind those principles. There is a body of literature out there. And now with the rise of LLMs and the rise of other data sources, we're able to really, really dig in and think about these complex challenges. And then you go and you test it and you get advice, right? And then you iterate on it and you solve the problem. I find that engineering-focused mindset has helped me think that any hill or mountain can be conquered with structure behind it.
When I like that mindset of it's still all the same, it's still accounting at its base level, no matter what industry you're in, you still have to apply those base principles. And if you're not applying those, then you're not having good accounting practices. So no matter what industry you're in. So I like that approach that you're giving it.
Yeah, absolutely. And even things like you may hear from my accent, I didn't spend my childhood in the US. And so, maybe a bit of a personal comment about me. Both my parents are chartered accountants and my two older brothers are chartered accountants. And so I really grew up in that world of admittedly IFRS accounting, but really just the principles of how to think about assets, how to think about capital, how to think about returns. And when I had the great fortune to come to the US, I found it really quite exciting, actually, to learn more about US GAAP and learn more about the principles behind US GAAP, which are the same as the principles of IFRS, but also the historical context that drive the differences that we see.
Definitely. So, at your current organization, Shield AI, you guys operate at the intersection of finance, technology, and kind of national security. Are there different challenges that are brought up when you're kind of navigating that as your team, and how do you navigate them?
So I'll start by telling you something about Shield AI. Shield AI's mission is to protect serving men and women with intelligent systems. And what that means for us is artificial intelligence and artificial intelligence-enabled hardware, specifically Group 3 drones, which we make call the VBAT. And what is exciting about working in the defense industry is the support that we have gotten over the years from our customer. And what that means is there is a willingness, because of the focus on the mission, to take certain risks and allow and enable us to develop our core technology. There's also a willingness to support those risks by giving us research and development dollars So in our early stage of our development, entities such as the DIU and all the DoD entities were really supportive of us getting our. In addition, we have a customer that has allies. We have allies all over the world, and we can, when we invest in sales and marketing in the US, it also pays off internationally. The challenges from an accounting perspective is, as a taxpayer, I care very much about this. Every dollar that the US government spends is a dollar that's been contributed by you and I. So there is real responsibility for DoD entities to be very thoughtful about where the monies are spent. Are they being compliant with their goals, and have we done what we said we were going to do? And so the process, the go-to-market contracting process takes longer. Very often we have post-delivery audits that we have to perform. We have reviews. We have national security controls that we have to have. And so even if we're not a public company, but very, very often we have some of those controls that are akin to what you would see in a public company. In addition, as we expand abroad, we have to be really, really thoughtful about data and information. We have to be really thoughtful about which allies and what could happen with our artificial intelligence technology if it fell into the wrong hands. And then we have to obviously work very closely with US state entities to make sure that we're furthering the interests of our host country.
So talking about expanding, I know a lot of folks I've spoken to many different, smaller businesses, and as they're expanding, it's hard to kind of maintain agility as you grow. Are there different strategies that have worked best for you and your organization as you're expanding and there's more input coming in? You got to make sure that you still have those right internal controls and the right agility as you grow as an organization.
Yeah, absolutely. So the analogy I use with my team is if you've ever been to Hong Kong, you've got those scaffolding buildings. They're often made of bamboo. You think it's extraordinary how you can build a skyscraper with bamboo, but bamboo is actually pretty strong and very flexible. We are that line that is pretty strong and supports the business, but remains very flexible. And how we do it is we embed finance further up the chain and as deep as possible. And I'm going to give you two specific examples of how we do it. First of all, technical accounting. Very often in many companies, you'll have the BD team goes off and gets the legal team involved to get a contract together. And at the end, someone like pops over a contract over to technical accounting, and then they're scrambling to think, what does this mean for RevRec? What does this mean for what are the risks and so on? And that was something I really, really wanted to change. I wanted the BD reps to think of technical accounting as their partners at the very beginning. So often with our customers, when we're just at the term sheet stage, even before the final contract, even before the initial drafts, my technical accounting team is there in the room, it's giving guidance, and that is great because we flag any potential problems up front, so we know about them. We can often discuss them with our auditors. Shout out to PwC, they're fantastic. B, we can work very closely with the team around things like managing risks or payment schedules or revenue recognition. So that way, when the contract is done, it's not new to us. We've been in the room, we've been at the table, we've done that place there. Secondly, we have two divisions in our company. We have a HiveMind AI division, and we have our aircraft, kind of our VBAT manufacturing and sales division. Very different challenges. In the former, we have things like software revenue recognition. We have things like, where is the contract obligation and so on. How do you do that? And then secondly, on the aircraft, we have, as you would expect, inventory, working capital, and a range of other issues when we're thinking about cost of goods sold and allocation of cost. And so what we've done is embed our finance teams in both areas. And so I have a finance team for HiveMind that's thinking through pricing, that's thinking through government regulations, that's thinking through all the software dynamics. And I have a very operational aircraft team that sits in Dallas that is working through the inventory counts, or working through managing our fleet of VBATs, which we have on our balance sheets. That is the only way that you can be flexible if you're in the room and at the table.
What strategies would you give to somebody who is saying, hey, I want to make sure that I'm embedding my team, just as you described, like, oh, I want to do that too, but they're not necessarily getting the agreement from, those around them as well?
Yeah, that's great. It's a really, really good question. So you earn your place at the table. You don't demand your place at the table. Often finance is seen as remote or almost a bit like an internal version of your external auditors. Three things have to happen. First of all, the role of finance is to be evangelical about controls and why we bring the controls in. And that is not condescending to people, but just explaining the journey that we're in and explaining the benefits. B, you have to bring gifts. Our teammates have great challenges that they're trying to solve every day. We're all really focused on the mission. And if you find ways to make their jobs easier, faster, more accurate, people will open doors for you. So I say to the team, you have to kind of bring gifts to our counterparties so they see you as not physical gifts. That would be
Bring cookies to the different meetings.
correct. Exactly. Yeah. And finally, you have to show up. And, there's a long debate about remote work and non-remote work. And I know that a ton of finance teammates, including some of my very beloved teammates, are remote, and that really, really works for them. But we're in a manufacturing engineering company. The technicians who build our VBATs, can't build a VBAT from home. They turn up. And so if you're in the office and understanding their challenges and you're able to sit with them person to person, you often get a lot more buy-in. And so what that means, if you are remote, you organize symposiums where you can come in, you show up in the office and build those relationships as well.
Yeah. It's not just staying in your silo and saying, I'm just going to get my stuff done, which causes the surprises that you're avoiding by having your team in there early.
Yeah. Yeah. And just one thing, you really remind me of something. Is just what I find with finance people is a very strong focus on, I need to solve this problem.
Mm-hmm.
I need to get through this close. I need to get through this audit. And that shows a lack of empathy and curiosity for our teammates. Engineers, manufacturing people love to explain what they're doing. They also have their own goals. And if you have a 30-minute conversation and you're able to get what you need in 20 minutes, why not spend 10 minutes listening to the counterparty, understanding what they're going through, learning a little bit about what they're doing? I assure you, you'll enjoy it.
Oh, I love that advice. So when you as an organization, you're operating in like the defense sector and even the commercial sectors, how do your financial strategies differ? And are there challenges that come up when you're managing both of those models?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just talk a little bit about what we're doing. We started up in the aerospace and defense industry, and we're now expanding our AI, our hybrid efforts, which are more commercial motion. Originally starting with defense companies, but in a commercial transaction. So in terms of financial strategies, like I mentioned, the go-to-market cycle in the defense industry is long, and so very often you have an initial RFP, which is often very formal. That will have certain requirements. You have to put in a proposal. You go through that original proposal, and very often there's a demonstration where you'll go and demonstrate the capabilities and show it, first of all, technically, and often demonstrate it in the field. And there are very strict ways that they want to be fair and see that you are indeed the best solution. And sometimes there's what's called a protest ability. So when you win, other counterparties who did not win in the process can protest and say that it wasn't quite fair, and because the governments have to be fair, you win on the other end, and then you could win the contract. And I have to say, our government customers are all amazing and fantastic. They don't always pay exactly on time with what's in the contract, but we have never ever had to write off any receivable from our government contractors. So we've got the best customers, but they just kind of maybe sometimes take a little bit longer. That's a really long cycle.
Yeah.
And so we have to be really thoughtful about how we allocate costs as well to that cycle, because obviously probability of win changes as you go through that cycle. We have to be really, really thoughtful about financing. We have a great debt financing partner, Hercules Capital, that supports us as we kind of tie up inventory maybe slightly longer than we would want to. We then have to be really, really thoughtful about government customers and how we land and expand and grow from a return on capital employed perspective. In the commercial motion, it's a less defined process, a shorter process, but it often has a lot more upfront sales and marketing expense, right? The cost to acquire is greater.
Yeah.
Particularly as you're kind of working through with the particular customer, often the touch points are less defined, right? So because you don't have such a strict process, you have to think about who has access to the C-suite, who has access at a manager level, and how can you showcase your capabilities all the way through. And our commercial motion is much more of a software motion. And so, we're working in a really thoughtful way about how we grow in that. And we announced last week the addition of a really fantastic CEO, Gary Steele, who's rejoining us in mid-May. And his entire bread and butter is building commercial software businesses. He was previously CEO of Proofpoint, and also CEO of Splunk, which is taken over by Cisco.
So this might not be relevant, but when you're saying that long process that the government contracts take, how does that change when you're looking at something like revenue recognition? With that long process, the revenue recognition changes as well.
Yeah. So it depends on the nature of the revenue and nature of the contract. We do deliveries of EBAT, but we also have recognized revenue over time as a percentage of completion, where we use an EAC methodology as well. And that's where, again, what I said at the start about having contracts really there at the beginning and being really thoughtful with your partner about what are the obligations over time and how do you assess at any given point how you're doing against the obligations you have overall. One of the other net effects of that is that we're a company that keeps time, right? And so we have to be really thoughtful on a daily basis about how much time our engineers and teammates such as myself are allocating particular contracts, because that drives revenue. Because that tells you, as you know, in EACs, where am I relative to the actual goal? How far is it going to take me to get to the goal and the obligation in the contract? How much revenue can I recognize? That's an area where when we do the audits with PwC, when we close the books, that is really the bulk of the points where we drill down in a lot of detail to make sure that we are really, really on point on that as well.
Yeah. So when you and I spoke before, you had mentioned that, you're big into, helping allocate and attract capital for your organization. Are there any lessons you can share that you've learned that from securing that funding and managing investor relations within your high growth? Because it is a very high growth environment where you're working.
Yeah, no, absolutely. There are three things I'd say. The first is understand the tailwinds and headwinds in your industry and really be able to speak very clearly about them, right? So in our industry, we're Shield AI, we're an AI company, we work in the defense industry. We've been doing it for 10 years. We're fortunate that, as they say in the UK, your buses come at the same time, right? So, but we've been doing AI and we've been doing defense tech for 10 years. And so there are tailwinds like increased expenditure for defense for our allies in Europe, the increased focus for in the US on AI and machine learning, on mass, so intelligence, affordable mass, attritable platforms. But there are also headwinds, such as as things change geopolitically, how is a US company seen in Europe, which is another growing market? And as you say, the kind of the working capital, how much capital do you need to build up the minimum skill to work in this space? And what we do very honestly and openly is talk about the strengths and the challenges, because then your investors can calibrate. The second thing is to be really clear as to what your core technology is and to tell the story of the journey of where you've been going and why you've been doing it. So what does that mean for us? Is trust. We've been doing AI in the defense industry for 10 years. We fly F-16s and fighter jets autonomously all the time now. We flew the past Secretary of the Air Force autonomously as well. But 8 years ago, no one would have taken us seriously because we hadn't developed technology sufficiently and we didn't have the trust. And so what we did was we started off in the quadcopter market, so much smaller drones, significantly cheaper, and flew HiveMind, which is our AI stack on that. We then climbed the aviation food chain to the VBATs, which is our Group 3 UAS, and then also did that again to the fighter jets. And so we're able to tell the story about development and where it was a few years ago, and then more importantly, tell the story of how with each investment and each round we've made, we've accelerated our core technology. And then finally, we are still cash flow negative, EBITDA negative. I can tell you that's something I think about every day, and we're getting there and being EBITDA positive. We're growing quite quickly. So I take very seriously is that every cent we spend is a cent that's being provided to us by people who believe in our mission and believe in our team. And so it behooves us to be very crisp on what exactly will we achieve with this fundraise? When will we achieve it? And most importantly, how will you, investor or board, know if we're on track or not? And so give you the confidence for the next time that we fundraise. And so if you talk about your industry and the headwinds and tailwinds, talk about why you are well placed to win in that industry with your core technology and are very clear about what you want to achieve, we find it's pretty a compelling narrative for investors.
Well, and having the person who is in charge of the finance, telling that story, I'm sure is even more comforting for the investor as they're listening, saying, hey, you know what you're talking about because you're the one in the weeds with your team doing that.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It's a partnership approach.
Hmm.
It goes back to what I said about curiosity. I one of the benefits I have is I'm not an engineer, but I have an engineering degree, so I can, with a straight face, say some engineering concepts. But we have phenomenal engineers in our company.
Yeah.
Brandon and Ryan, who started the company, Alma Harris, and Nate Michael. It's really fantastic. And I learn from them every day. And so when I'm with investors, I can say, okay, this is my understanding based on my discussion with the engineering team. I'd be delighted to bring them in the room. And that really resonates with people, being kind of very open and honest about what you're aware of and where your partners internally could help you with some explanation.
So, with the great story you've been telling about your team and, how growth the organization is happening, uh, I just have to ask, what do you look for in talent when you're looking for add more people to your finance and accounting team? What do you look for in talent? How do you structure your team for long-term success? Because when you're in a fast growth environment, I'm sure it's very fast paced and constantly moving, but you have your people in place and you trust them.
Yeah, yeah. I shout out to my team. They are the best team I've worked with in my career. I'm really honored to work for them. I really mean that. I work for them, and I'm really proud of them. The way I structure the team is we have a core accounting team, we have a finance team, and we have what we call a continuous improvement team, which is really our team that manages our systems and our ERP. With the accounting team, something that's really important to me is to bring a team of all talents, really. I have people in my team who worked in private equity finance, who worked in large defense companies, who worked in startups. And really, they're able to tackle challenges which day to day seem new, but very often have occurred in the past if you're willing and able to do the work. And so, what that means is putting in the controls we need, but not too much. And what that means is coming back every day with first principle thinking to the problems that we have today, and that our team does a really, really good job at that. Secondly, with the finance team, we have a range of really excellent people who have worked with larger companies, mid-sized companies, and have scaled. And with that team, what I'm looking for there is a strong partnership approach. I want the individual division heads to think of them almost as their mini CFOs. And we're not perfect yet, but we're getting there. And really, when our head of aircraft has his team of his right and left hand men and women, he has my finance person next to him as well, helping him make very, very good decisions. And in my continuous improvement team, just a comfort with data and a comfort with flexibility in what we're doing as a company that's growing very quickly, still private, but has ambitions to potentially go public. Underpinning everything that I look for in teammates is empathy, curiosity. That is so critical.
Yeah.
Because it's with curiosity that you gain empathy and then you gain trust, and really an excitement to put in the effort. What we're doing is not easy. It requires from time to time extra effort, and the prize is clearly the mission that we are very focused on, and obviously, we remunerate our team fairly, but also the prize is growth, and that comes in with a curiosity as well.
Yeah, you have to be curious to kind of be engaged in the mission, even if you're not an engineer and you don't understand what the organization is doing. You want to be passionate about what you're doing so you can help out the organization as a whole. And that's not something that you can always teach. That's something that's kind of innate in some people.
Yeah, look, I do want to say to people that there's no such thing as a good or a bad accountant or a
Hmm.
finance person. It's just like the right fit, right?
Yeah.
Like a marriage. Sometimes, you're both wonderful people, but you're not meant to be together. And so in interviews, I tell people, I think you're fantastic, but maybe this is not the firm for you. If you don't have a drive, if you don't care at all about our mission in any way,
Yeah.
if you're not willing to kind of, be curious and deal with change, then you may be happier somewhere else, and that's fine. But those are the kind of traits that we look for here at Shield AI.
So what role has technology played within your finance team? How has you helped use technology to complete the mission that you're on?
Yeah. So the message I told my team a year ago is that we are going to 10x revenue with having a zero net increase in the size of the team, right? So that is an extraordinary challenge in terms of productivity. I'm saying that we are going to 10x our productivity more or less.
Yeah.
And the only way we will do that is with the right processes, with the right systems, and with the right people. We've already spoken about people, so I'll set that aside. And when I look at our processes, there are a range of things that we can automate. There are a range of things we can simplify. the first step is to just ask, why do we do things? Again, the first principles, why do we do things this way? So we're piloting using LLMs to look at our journal entries and look at how we can think about our adjustments. We are using AI to think about where the risk areas are that require more reviews. The whole team's using LLMs in the way we tackle challenges in terms of our reporting and net P&A. And quite often as well, we're building data sheets, and so that, with our reporting now, very often it's, I'm a person in finance, I have this information that gives me an output in Excel, then I go and sit down with someone in the business and explain to them how it's done. And what we're doing is trying to disintermediate ourselves and to produce dashboards and information flows that are robust and that are accurate, and so that the individual in the driving seat in the front office has access to the data and can make decisions faster with support of finance, as opposed to us almost like being the intercessor between the two. And that takes time and that takes effort.
Yeah.
And we're thinking through all of these steps as well. What's great, though, is that people in the team are reacting really, really well to that, because the net effects of that is that some of the more drudgery-based tasks, some of them lower value tasks that we'll be able to accurately move on to the technology that people can do. And then people can spend their days doing really thoughtful things like talking to the BD reps about particular contracts and thinking about RevRec and being really thoughtful about timing of particular payments, or like managing the risk that we have with our FX in different countries. That's fun stuff, right? And so that's the stuff that we really, really want the team to focus on.
Have you seen an impact? You are a AI driven company. Have you been able to use AI within your finance team to kind of help some of those processes as well?
Yeah, and we see, yes, absolutely. And I think that's one of the things that we will see a lot more of that.
Yeah.
There's still, I think with any technology, because we live this with our customers, I'm going to go back to the word trust, right? And so part of it is just, okay, you start with something smaller, particular, like lower risk item. Because a lot of the accounting team are not keen to deploy AI because we're really under the gun to close the books accurately and quickly. But there are many products as we go along that we can use AI to accelerate our suite, and we can use particular skills and also technology that we have some of our service providers that we use Flowcast, for example, for checklists, and we do the close. And so we'll be implementing more systems over the next 12 to 18 months. Like I say, we are going to be keeping the team the same size as revenues growing, and we will achieve that. So.
Well, that's going to be quite a testament to see it done, and I welcome that and I encourage it. And Kingsley, I just want to thank you so much for coming on the podcast. It's been really great getting to know you and just hearing about what your team's doing, and it's been great.
Yeah, absolutely. The last thing I'll say is I am passionate and excited for finance, and anyone who's in this industry, please stick with it. This is a great industry to be in, and we are making an impact every day. So thank you so much for having me.
This has been Count Me In, IMA's podcast, providing you with the latest perspectives of thought leaders from the accounting and finance profession. If you like what you heard and you'd like to be counted in for more relevant accounting and finance education, visit IMA's website at www.imanet.org.